So let's go into kind of power generation, then we'll start over on this side, like what we can generate, what kind of power.
Yep.
And Brian Welsh and Dustin Laborde is very similar questions about how much power we can generate daily, how much power we can stow in the batteries, you kind of covered that a little bit, and if any excess power is generated. And I think that's it. They kind of yeah.
Okay, so how much power can we generate daily?
Yeah.
Well, the generator is easy. I mean, that's 8 kilowatts
Yep.
as long as we have fuel, so it's probably not even worth touching on that. I'll talk about the solar first because that's by far our number one source of power.
Yeah.
The cool thing about this, where's that? I'll bring it over there. So this is you got a good shot of that? So this is the Blue Solar MPPT 100 volt, 50 amp charge controller. So 100 volts maximum from the solar panels. This is what regulates all of it. It's not a very big box, but it's pretty efficient. And what I'm going to do here is, the cool thing about this guy is it actually has a Bluetooth connection. So I can show you the amount of power that we generate from solar. So what is it? 3 in the afternoon right now. The sun is medium, high in the sky. Right now we're making 715 watts of power. So, we're 200 watts under our maximum. It's a nice clear day. That's not too bad. It shows us our voltage. This is the solar panel voltage, 37 volts. This is the current we're putting in.
That's exactly why this thing is important, right?
This is the information from this box right here.
So imagine if that wasn't there and you're putting 36 volts directly into these batteries.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good.
So that's why.
Not with the lithium. And so this is the solar side. This is the battery side. So this shows the voltage. We're topped up 27.5 volts. Current we're putting in, 20 amps. It's almost like being plugged into the dock and running a small battery charger. The state of charge we're in bulk. And to answer the question about the amount of power, oops, dang it. Oh,
What do you do?
I hit the close button. Okay, we're back.
Show a picture of himself.
So this shows the history of the power that we're getting from solar. So today, so far, we've gotten 3.39 kilowatt hours of energy. So that means it would be, 1,000 watts for 3.39 hours, or,
It's like
that's
running the generator for
half an hour.
half an hour, yeah.
At full, assuming you can get 100% of that energy to go into the batteries.
Yeah.
But if you look back, yesterday we got 4.68 kilowatt hours. 2 days ago, 5.03, 5.06,
a lot of power.
4.6, 4.68, 5. And I think what would be cool is, if anybody cares to know how much power their house uses, look at your electric bill. Because if you look at your electric bill, it will tell you the amount of energy you consume in kilowatt hours. And it varies drastically from country to country and the type of house and everything. But it would be pretty cool to know what fraction of the house that Delos is able to make just by those 3 solar panels.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting, I think. Anyway, the other thing that's pretty crazy to think about is, I looked at this. I measured the amount of power that we got before we made the battery change. And before we made the battery change, the amount of power we'd get would be about 3 to 3.5, never more than 4. And now we're always getting 4, sometimes 5.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons for that, I think, and we kind of suspected this would happen, is the charging efficiency of the lithium batteries is at least 30, most likely 40% greater than lead batteries.
Yeah.
So just by changing the battery type, it was almost like adding another solar panel.
Yeah.
That was the change. In fact, when you configure this, So I'm going to go into some of the settings because I think they're pretty cool. This thing is quite cool because when you look in the settings for the battery, you can configure the battery voltage. We're on a 24 volt system, whether it's enabled or not. And you can also put in your different voltages for the battery profile. So because these are lithium batteries, we basically have only a bulk method where we just put all the power into the batteries until they become charged, and then it goes to float. So there's no absorption time like you would have on lead acid batteries.
Would that be the same as like a trickle charge? Or is that float? Is that the same?
Float would be like a maintenance.
Yeah.
Sort of. So you're just, okay, we got to this voltage, now let's keep it there. So these batteries, according to the manufacturer, Dragonfly, we bring them up to 29.2. And then it charges, and then it just shuts off, and then it maintains at 27.2. I have the equalization voltage set at 0, so it never reads that. So that it's pretty easy. And the other thing is in here, I think that's actually all I wanted to show on this.
That's it.
That's it.
What happens to the excess power that's generated?
Okay,
that's like
so
if everything's charged.
Assuming that the batteries were 100% charged, which
Let's say we're at the dock and the batteries are completely charged and the solar panels are still.
So basically, the charge controller
Yeah.
would just limit power sent to the batteries. There would just be no current flow. It would limit current. It would maintain voltage and limit current, so no energy would be sent in. It's pretty simple. So that rarely happens because we always have so many loads on Delos that unless we leave the boat for a day or two, the solar panels are not enough to fully charge the bank with us on board using toilets and computers and everything else. If we do ever have excess power, we just run the ice machine.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So we covered how much power we got from solar. From wind, we get a fraction of that power. So maybe we'll take a look at the silent wind, what it's putting out right now. So it's blowing 14 knots, 15 knots. So a pretty standard, you can hear the wind generator kick on. We're getting out of that power about 25-30 watts. So the wind's a little bit low now. Yeah, let's call it 25 watts.
So you get a shot of it.
Now it's come down and we're not getting that much. Now we're getting 10 watts, 8 watts. Okay, so now we were up at 40 watts for a moment when the wind came up to 16 knots. Now we're almost nothing. So I would say on average we get like somewhere between 5 and 10% of our power from this. The nice thing about the wind generator is it's running 24 hours a day. So if it's a windy night and it's blowing like 15 to 20 knots, it's putting in like 60 or 70 amps, which is, 60 or 70 watts, which is 2, maybe 3 amps for us, but it's doing it around the clock, where the solar is only active half the day at best. So it's just one piece of the puzzle, but the majority comes from the solar, for sure.
So another question by Andy in the same paragraph was asking about the wind generators specifically and how bad is the noise? What wind ranges do we find ourselves using them? Like, what's the minimum? What's the maximum wind? And yeah, go from there.
So we have 2 of them. One is a silent wind, which is about 2 years old. We put on in South Africa. The other one is an RX, which was on Delos when I bought her. So that's quite an old unit. The RX is so loud that it's basically a backup generator. We only turn it on when we leave the boat or we don't like our neighbors. Something like that. Because when it pipes up to like 20 knots, 25 knots, that thing just, we call it an anchor sweeper.
Really loud.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the silent wind. You can hear it. It's cranking in power right now. Not too noisy. But now I'm going to show you why we never turn the other one on.
They're easy.
Okay, so right now the silent wind is putting in 25 watts. Not a lot of wind. 25 watts. Now let's crank this beastie up. See the difference. It's not even enough wind to crank it up now. Oh, there he goes. Listen to the difference on that thing. Puts out the same power, it's just like 8 times noisier. Hey Karen, can you turn that noisy beast off again? Top one. Okay. So that is why you always see that one running and that one not running. The silent wind I find to be quite tolerable. Like, I don't know. I don't have any experience with any others, but I don't think it's too bad. We leave it on all the time. Between 15 and 20 knots of wind, it produces maybe 2 or 3 amps of power, 60 to 70 watts for us. And it just runs, cranks 24 hours a day. Just putting in much less power than the solar, but it's 24 hours a day, so
yep,
it helps.
Cool. Have we considered putting any thin flexible panels on the bimini or non-walking parts of the deck?
Yes, we've thought about it quite a bit. We haven't done it. I think because, well, for me personally, I wanted to limit the changes in the system, because if we added more solar, then we would have had no way to compare how the improvements we made with the batteries and stuff.
Yeah.
So now maybe that we have these baseline numbers, we could throw some panels.
Is it really necessary, you think?
I think we have plenty of power, honestly. We stopped caring about the amount of energy we
charging
use.
things,
we leave the inverter on all the day. We run the ice machine. We have freezers running. All of our laptops are on all day long, and we're able to do whatever we like, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to conserve and turn off the inverter, but once we changed to the new batteries,
doesn't matter.
I don't know, we just stopped thinking about it.
Yeah, now the only reason to run the generator is to make water, to fill dive tanks, do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And to run that off solar is
once every
a
4
whole
days.
other world.
Yeah.
Okay. This next question is from Andy Stins. And he says, with the new lithium ions, there's hardly an absorption charge period, and you're essentially always in bulk charge mode, which you just talked about. Wind and solar hardly produce the kind of power that batteries can take. Are you finding yourself producing the lion's share of power with the generator in shorter high-intensity charge periods? Are wind and solar contributing much at all? Do you have the stats on the percentages of wind and solar versus the genset?
Ooh, yes, good question. There's a lot in that one. So yes, the batteries can take basically as much power as you give them. So they're all rated on a C rating, and 1C is 100 amps. Mm-hmm. And since we have 4 banks of batteries in series, we should be able to put 400 amps of power into those batteries. So what we're generating with the solar at 15 or 20 amps is like basically a fraction of that. But if you look at the energy over the period of a day, you're still getting 5 kilowatt hours, which would be, the almost the same as running all of our chargers for like 1 hour.
Yeah.
So it works out the same, even though it's not so much energy at once. Over time, it is quite a bit of energy.
Yeah. You have some notes up here at the top.
I have some notes. Yep. So
the stats on the percentages of wind versus solar versus genset.
Yes. Now we actually found out, and we kind of suspected this, even though we switched our cooking to all electric, so we got rid of propane. We increased our electrical load, we were betting that our generator time was actually going to go down. And I did look at the numbers from the maintenance logs. I measured a period of 5 months before we installed the new batteries.
Yeah.
And the stove. And then I measured a period of 5 months after we did the installation. All of the things, we're out cruising, we're not tied up to a dock, so everything's pretty equal. So before we did the electrical upgrade, we would run the generator over a period of 5 months. We ran it 296 hours for an average of 59.2 hours per month. After we did the upgrade for 5 months, we ran the generator 211 hours for an average of 42.2 hours per month. I think that's pretty cool, and I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. So basically, doing that upgrade, even increasing the electrical load, we decreased our generator running time by about 30%.
Yeah.
The reasons for that, I think, are, number one, the biggest thing is the battery is charged so much more efficiently. So we're getting more out of the solar and the wind because the batteries are, instead of creating heat and bubbles in lead and acid, the energy is going directly into charging the lithium.
What would have taken like 4 hours with the old batteries takes like an hour now, right?
Yes. So we can go much longer between running the generator now. So when it was just Karen and I on the boat, we could go easily 7 or 8 days using everything on the boat without needing to run the generator. We would only run the generator when we wanted to make water.
Yeah.
And now with the 4 of us on board, we can easily go, 4 days?
Yeah.
5 days? Before we run the generator to either charge or make water or something.
And that's
like
directly because the batteries can be taken to a different level than the old batteries.
Well, yeah. So they charge much more efficiently. You can put a lot more power into them, and there's no absorption, or there's no equalization. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yes.
They stay in bulk charge for a long time. They basically charge, and then they shut off. Whereas the lead acid would start out like this, and then the current would go down,
and that period would take hours and
then
hours.
You're suddenly charging it at 15 or 20 amps for a long time, whereas with the lithium, it's just like full power, and then it just shuts off.
Yeah.
So generators are a lot more efficient when you're running them loaded up. So we're running the generator less time, and we're running it more efficiently. And the other thing is, the batteries we can take down to the manufacturer claims 5%. We have a hard time getting them under 15% before we need to run the generator for something.
And what are normal lead acid batteries? What's their limit where you run them down?
Well, if you take them under 50%, you significantly shorten their lifespan. To prolong ours, we used to always take them to about 70% of capacity.
Yeah.
So you're using about 30% of the battery. Here we're using 85% of the battery.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a car, and if you drove your car, if you let your fuel tank go under 50%, it would ruin your engine.
Yeah.
How would that be? Not good. It's silly, right?
Yeah.
So I think I answered that.
Yep.
In the tropics, we average 4.5 kilowatt hours per day from the solar. And if we're in the trade winds, where it's blowing about 15 knots on average, we get another 1 kilowatt hour from wind power. So to break down the actual percentages, I would guesstimate we get about 25% of our power from the generator, about 10% from wind, and the bulk being 65% from solar. Keep in mind, on Delos, we use way more power than the average cruising boat. We often have all the laptops, Wi-Fi, and a lot of electronics running, not to mention the ice machine and electric stove and oven. Plus, we often sail with 4 to 6 people on board, all using the electric toilets, water pumps, and fans. With 2 people as crew, we found our dependence on the generator to be only for filling dive tanks and making water, not charging the batteries. If you like the video and you like the topics, please be sure to like it on YouTube. Leave a comment That really helps us to know whether we're on the right track with making the videos that you want to see. And most importantly, we're still releasing videos on a weekly basis. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. It makes sure that you get all the videos from us as a notification, and it really helps us in our YouTube demographics and stats and things. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.